I now give the floor to Mr. Huang Xia. Mr. President, members of the Council, I would like to thank you for this invitation to give a briefing on the developments in the situation of Eastern DRC and also to share with you some information about the regional situation. The dire situation now urgently requires parties to pay close attention together and immediately take concerted action to respond.
At the end of January, we witnessed history repeating itself worryingly when M23, supported by the Rwandan Defense Forces, once again stormed the city of Goma. Today, after only 3 weeks, M23 now controls Bukavu, and if our information is correct, they continue to advance towards other strategic areas in North and South Kivu. At this stage, we are not aware of the intricacies of the M23 agenda and do not really know the intention of their backers. Neither do we know how far they will go or why, but what we do know, in the light of developments in recent weeks and in view of acts on the ground as well as public statements made by stakeholders in the region, is that the risk of a regional conflagration is more real today than ever before. This situation must stop before we see the triggering of a widespread regional war, the consequences of which would be devastating from several points of view. Consequently, we must all step up our efforts to avoid undoing and undermining, indeed, all efforts made over the last decade, aiming to achieve stability, cooperation, and the integration of countries in the Great Lakes region. Mr. President, distinguished members of the Council, I hail the countries and organizations in the region who have rallied to quickly respond to the crises. They've done that, namely, by convening various summits. The summits of the EAC summit, the summit of the EAC, rather, the SADC summit, the Heads of States Conference of the Central African Community, and there was also the Heads of State Summit on the humanitarian situation held in Malabo, along with the joint EAC SADC Summit. All of these summits unanimously underscored the crucial importance of respecting the territorial integrity of the DRC. They roundly condemned the M23 offensive and also as well as the support afforded to that group. At the same time, the summits emphasized the need to rapidly find a political and diplomatic solution to the crisis. In this connection, the joint EAC SADC summit marks a key step in terms of the emergence of a regional approach which is finally coordinated, concerted and unified in nature. It is laying down the cornerstones for a consensus-based resolution to the crisis in Eastern DRC. The joint summit emphasized the need for a political solution, calling for the resumption of direct negotiations and dialogue with all stakeholders. The joint summit also called for the merging of the Nairobi and Luanda processes with a view to bolstering coordination and ensuring complementary work, as well as the creation of a coordination mechanism at a secretariat level. Moreover, the African Union Peace and Security Council met at heads of state level on the 14th of February. It enshrined the decisions reached at the joint EAC SADC summit. At the same time, it recalled the need to respect the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the DRC and condemned the activities of both the M23 and its backers. The Peace and Security Council also called for coordination to be strengthened, as well as for technical support and for the implementation of financing mechanisms in order to buttress peace efforts. It's now important that we see the expeditious and effective implementation of the outcomes of all of these summits. I am delighted to here note that the preparations for the Chiefs of Staff meeting of EAC and SADC are underway, and that the meeting could be held in the coming days. Elsewhere, the secretariats of these two regional organizations, as well as the AU Commission, have guaranteed that they will follow up on the decision to implement a joint technical coordination mechanism. Consultations are also underway between member states concerned in order to establish the modalities which will see the merging of the Nairobi and Luanda processes. These include namely the possible appointment of additional facilitators to bolster both coordination and coherence. I should take this opportunity to call for women to be duly included in these mediation mechanisms in accordance with common commitments entered into regarding women's participation. Moreover, I here wish to commend the role played by Congolese civil society stakeholders, particularly that played by religious leaders. They have spared no effort in recent weeks to consult all relevant stakeholders with a view to bringing them back to the negotiation table. All of these processes are encouraging. However, they must be supported and followed up by regional action. As far as I'm concerned, I have undertaken consultations with all stakeholders involved in order to encourage coordination and the speedy implementation of provisions agreed upon. These provisions are crucial if we are to ultimately achieve the de-escalation of the situation on the ground. They're also vital in order to support humanitarian aid, the protection of women and girls that have been victims of violence, and in order to guarantee the resumption of a dialogue which involves all relevant actors, in accordance with decisions taken by heads of state. In the next few days, I will continue to engage with regional stakeholders to encourage them in their efforts and to reiterate that the United Nations stands ready to extend to them political and technical support. President, distinguished members of the Council, as catastrophic as the situation may appear today, it can, grow worse. 12 years after the signing of the Framework Agreement and 19 years after the signing of the Pact of the International Conference on the Great Lakes region, history is repeating itself, unfortunately. We must take action now. We must act quickly, collectively, and in a decisive fashion. As we were reminded by our Secretary General, we must quickly guarantee the implementation of these following three immediate priorities. 1. De-escalation via an immediate ceasefire and through all parties' compliance with international law and their upholding of commitments entered into as part of regional and international mechanisms, including the Addis Ababa Framework Agreement. The latter indeed demands that no one tolerate or supply either assistance or any support whatsoever to armed groups. It also calls upon all parties to respect the sovereignty and territorial integrity of neighbouring states. The cessation of hostilities is a matter of urgency if we are to address the devastating humanitarian consequences of the conflict, as well as the consequences for human rights. if we are to lay the necessary foundations for a constructive dialogue. The second priority is the resumption of dialogue. We will never hammer this home enough. The solution to be found is a political one and not a military one. Dialogue and compromise are necessary to find a lasting solution. As such, I here urge all parties to return to the table and to draw upon provisions already agreed upon by the parties within the Luanda and Nairobi processes, or within any other processes which may arise. This in accordance with decisions taken by heads of state in the region. I urge all parties to engage in good faith in these peace efforts and to support them because they are essential in order to resolve the crisis and avoid a regional war. Let us work together to restore the ceasefire, to restore the territorial integrity of the DRC, and to definitively resolve the issue of the FDLR and that of M23 in order to ultimately heed the security concerns of all parties. I do not think that these two areas of focus are irreconcilable. It is today time to once again gather around the negotiating table and to candidly discuss the root causes of this conflict. The third priority, a holistic regional approach, is necessary to deal with the root causes of the conflict to which I previously referred. The region must prioritize a holistic approach which combines immediate action and also medium and long-term endeavors. Against that backdrop, it is important to continue and conclude the process seeking to revitalize the Addis Ababa Framework Agreement. That is a crucial tool. It's also vital to tackle once and for all the root causes of instability in the Great Lakes region. I would like to take this opportunity to reiterate my appeal for the urgent convening of the next high-level meeting of the Regional Oversight Mechanism. During that meeting, heads of state of the countries concerned will be called upon not only to express their unanimous support for peace efforts in order to put an end to the current crisis. They will also, however, be called upon to deliver their verdict on recommendations aiming to revitalize the framework agreement so that it can be comprehensively and genuinely implemented. Mr. President, allow me to conclude by issuing a direct appeal to the members of this Council. They too must use the full weight of their power in order to attempt to end the crisis. Robust and united action on the part of this Council is indeed paramount to avoid passing the point of no return and to convince the parties to return to dialogue, to restore peace and security in the Great Lakes region. I thank you.
I thank Mr. Xia for his briefing.